Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello, I came back from vacation with a froggy voice. I'm sorry about that. Good morning. It was fine until it was a moment ago. Oh boy, I go away for a week and all hell breaks loose. I said it was going to, but in fact it's going to break loose this week too. With these Supreme Court decisions, which they could in fact be coming down right now, but I'm hoping not. Need to take a little bit of a catch my breath. I'll tell you, having taken last week off, I was really glad I was off because there was beginning with the story about, and I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, Rachel Dolezal? Yeah, which was an extraordinary train wreck of a story that, you could, I don't know. I ended up spending a lot of time talking with my sister and niece on vacation about it. We couldn't find much to agree upon. Guys, I was glad I wasn't. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and two of the things that drive me insane about this country, which I love, the two things that make me craziest are our love of guns, our crazed love of guns, and our inability to rise above our original sin of slavery. I do despair, although I know that that's not a helpful emotion. And despair leads us nowhere. So I stand in awe of those like the extraordinary survivors of this latest horror in Charleston, who could, just a day after their loved ones were mowed down in their church, that they could stand and look at that pathetic creep and say they forgave him. I'm in awe of that. Those are people who go to church and listen. Those are people who not only profess their faith, but who clearly, in extremis, live it. And now we engage in the ritual that we have all come to know that follows these unbearable events. We say that now is a time for us to have a conversation. We say that now is the time that change must come. We say that it's time for this and time for that. And we talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And nothing changes. Hence my despair. But I happened to read something that a friend gave me the other day. It was written by Howard Zinn, and it's about pessimism and optimism, and about how you have to keep getting up and fighting the good fight. It does eventually move things forward. It is people who refuse to despair, but people who continued to act throughout history who kept moving it forward. And so those of us who cannot bear the gun culture must stop our apathy, our despair, our sense that we lost that battle, and continue it. And those of us who despair that white America and black America will never be able to come together must rise above it and continue the work. We have a caller. Hello, caller.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Hey, this was a terrible thing. I'll say that first. But I'm so disgusted with this news media on their coverage, the over-coverage of this event, and the lack of coverage of people getting killed every night in the street. They don't even talk about that. Or even soldiers getting killed. No coverage. But if it's a good story, they could go to the people and make a story out of it. Boy, they're right on it. I think it's just over the top anymore.
Well,
show after show has it on it, and you don't need all that coverage. How much more do you need to know after the people were killed? You really don't. I mean, it's just over the top. Disgusting.
Okay.
I don't need to see them in charge. I don't need any of that. It's a terrible thing. I agree. I say leave the people alone, too. Leave them alone. They're grieving. But they got to be right there. And they're just despicable. That's how I feel about the news media. I just don't like it. I don't even watch it anymore. I don't turn the TV on when it comes to news that much anymore.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but on the other hand, it is a story. And on the other hand, as I said, but it's the kind of story. As I said, we all know the drill. Now we're going to do this until they get another big story, and bang, they'll be off it. You know, right. I mean, you think of what have been the stories in the last, few weeks. There was remember the escaped convicts. Well, we would have been on that 24/7 still if the Rachel Dolezal or whatever her name is story hadn't broken. And man, we jumped on that. And I have to admit, that one was wondrously fascinating. And so we totally went on that. And then she lucked out big time by being bumped because of this slaughter. This is how media work. It is how they work now. Well, and yes, it's always overkill until the next nicely packaged story.
I really do. I hope it phases them out because they're pathetic. They really are.
Okay.
CNN, doesn't matter which one it is. They're all the same.
All right. Thank you. I find I thank you. Thank you. I can't watch it either. I mean, I can't watch because I need to sort of digest this stuff in my own time, in my own way. And I hate looking at the ritualistic coverage. We know how that coverage works. We know we're going to meet all the people who died. We're going to meet their families. We're going to hear how wonderful they were. That's the part I can barely stand. And yet I think that's the part I should pay attention to. I hate that we get to know this piece of crap person and that we read his rantings and his writings, and I don't know. And then the usual. So one of the quick sidebar stories that does have legs on this is the Confederate flag in South Carolina. I have been a hater of that flag since the first day I laid eyes on it in a history book. I hadn't seen one. When I started seeing them as I grew up, like on people's cars, I was so astonished. because I thought, well, those are the people who seceded from the Union. Those are the people that spurred the Civil War. That's the flag of the enemy of my country. What the hell is somebody flying that thing for? That is the flag of the people who fought to retain slaves. That is I couldn't believe that anyone would look at that flag and see it as something that they took pride in. And the older I got, the more I saw, wow, it was worse than I thought. Much worse than I thought. All I know is anytime I see somebody with that flag on their car, on their person, in a state that flies it, I recoil. And this idea that it represents something that should in any way be commemorated and or looked to with a nostalgic affection and seen as a symbol of the pride is beyond me. I think you'd be hard-pressed, I don't know this, to find a country that went through the wrenching horror of a civil war, of brother against brother, and the bloodiest war in the nation's history at that time. And that once the war had been won, that the losers, the vanquished, the defeated, should be allowed to continue to fly their murderous crap flag. That flag should have been, it's beyond me. It is beyond me. Unless you think that it has to do with heritage and this and that, it has nothing to do with keeping black people down. I read today, and I was blown away by it, that flag started flying over the South Carolina Capitol in the year 1962. Just about, when the civil rights movement was starting up, somebody saw fit down there in the South Carolina legislature to make sure that blacks in South Carolina knew damn well where they were living. They were living in Dixie. I hate that thing so much. Only my membership in the ACLU keeps me from saying what I really want to say, which is burn them all. That flag in and of itself is hate speech to me. I weary of this, and I know that I will go to my grave and things won't be much different. I'm hoping maybe a little better. And unfortunately, Charles Blow in the New York Times today deprives us of a refuge in thinking that racism was generational, and that if we just wait for all of these effing racists to die off, that younger people who grew up going to school with, knowing black people, yada, 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 that we would be a better country. once they die. Charles Blow, who's always looking at the numbers, says, sorry, this creep was born in 1994, 30 years after President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act. Racism is not dying with older people. Racism, he says, is to social progress what cockroaches are to nuclear fallout. Extraordinarily resilient. He said, so when you look at this act, this one act, there are so many threads to pull on this story that you don't know even where to begin, but if you begin there, that this killer was 21 years old. He's a millennial. And still buying all that crap. Did you read his manifesto? Ha! Amazing. Round up the usual suspects. It's blacks, it's Jews, it's Hispanics. All the old canards, all the these lies, this disease of racialism will, I'm afraid, never go away because human nature, human fear, human ignorance, human need to create hierarchies. But mostly I think it is fear of the other and the need to identify with the group. So these are pathetic white people like this kid seeing his entire identity based on the tone of his skin. Another troubling thing about this act is pointed out in a piece by the founders of the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is the organization that keeps track of these hate groups constantly, consistently. If you were doing a paper and needed to know how many are in Pennsylvania, how many have good, energetic chapters in southwestern Pennsylvania, if you were to call them, they got the answer. And they say this, that in America, when we think of terrorism, we immediately, of course, think of those guys. Al-Qaeda, ISIS. That's what we think of. Those are terrorists. And we recognize and we're able to connect dots and see that they're here and they're there and they're over here and they speak to each other through social media and they gain strength through social media and they gain recruits from social media. They spread their poison through social media, and we get it that they are not unconnected, that it is a global movement. What we don't get is so is the movement that this creep was a part of. It's another kind of terrorism, and it's white supremacist terrorism, and it is growing and is alive and is well, not just in our country. Have you been paying attention? It's really spiking in Europe. White supremacists talk to each other on the internet. They recruit on the internet. They are aware of fellow travelers and in contact with them. In Hungary, in Russia, in London, in France. They go to conventions together. They cross the Atlantic to meet up and trade important information. The fact that this jerk was wearing in that one photo that we first saw, the flag of Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and South Africa. Those symbols now globally, internationally, those flags are symbols of the international white supremacist movement, which is growing. As darker-skinned immigrants make their way from their violent and or distressed communities in Africa and in Asia, looking for hope, looking for work, and they go north and they drown in the Mediterranean by the thousands. And they so desperate are they, this migration of people. And Europe's response is fear. And in that fear, oh, what a petri dish for growing hate. So 2 things I think you'll want to remember from this. Let us not get complacent and think that this is a generational thing and it will die out. That somehow, all of a sudden, humanity has become better. We're the same damn humans that have ever walked the earth. The same weaknesses, the same tendencies. Enlightenment eludes us. Morris Dees, who's the founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center, points out that remember that unbelievably horrific terrorist attack in Norway? Remember that one loon who took a boat or something over to this island where all these wonderful young people were at some camp and hunted them and mowed down 70 young people? What was his motivation? Well, when you looked into it, it came down to he was a member of Stormfront, a registered user. Stormfront. That's the web forum that was founded by a former KKK leader. Now has 300,000 members, paying members, 2/3 of whom are American, 100 of whom are in Norway, in Hungary, all over the world, all feeling the same fear and distress and disgust at these darker-skinned people who they think are out to get them. If you haven't been paying attention, the rise of neo-fascist right-wing parties in Europe, scary. I've been talking about this for years. I don't think anybody listens. So, ISIS knows how to play the internet. And so do these people. And so, if you used to have one literal lone wolf, somebody who thought these things, but he couldn't connect, didn't know where other like-minded people were to give him strength, to give him new information, to give him the resolve to act. The internet has changed that. Haters now happily can congregate, can join hands and find one another. So terrorists love social media. Just love it. And the internet allows people with a deranged, unstable, skewed perspective on reality to nurture that perspective by seeing that they're not alone, that there are other brilliant people who feel exactly the same way, that there are books, there are videos, there are places you can join, there's even conventions, there's how-tos. So understand, yeah, this was terrorism. I mean, if this ain't terrorism, black people in this country have been the victims of institutionalized terror for hundreds of years. And they know terror every day because of the racism in this country, because of the just unconscious reactions of whites who have lived in our culture and our country and lived in the South with that damn stars and bars flying. Can you imagine looking with such respect and honor at a flag flown by people who were fighting to keep other people in chains? All right. Coming up on Wednesday, I'm very eager to talk to the gentleman who will be here. His name is Damon Young. He is the editor-in-chief of a very well-regarded blog, VSB, standing for Very Smart Brothers. He's a contributing editor for Ebony. He is a Pittsburgher. I've been reading his blog. Here is what he said a day after, or the day of, this latest massacre. The privilege of being allowed to exist on Earth, and the experiences, the enlightenments, and the beauties associated with this privilege comes with a couple unfavorable conditions. One, we will die. Two, we will coexist with entities actively attempting to kill us. These are facts every human is conscious of, but this awareness is mostly subconscious. While we do things to actively stave off our demise, the very real reality that we can die at literally any moment does not dominate our thoughts. Shouldn't, at least. Because we would not be able to exist if we remained hyper-conscious of the fact that one day, any day, we will not. There are people in the world who have to be more conscious, though, of the tenuousness of their existence. People who, in order to continue to survive, have to allow the reality that every moment can be their last to dominate their thoughts. People who cannot relax. People who cannot breathe. While attempting to explain the psychic toll of being black in America to a white person, there's really no way to articulate the feeling of existing in a place where you're never able to not be aware of the reality of death. Of being forced to be hyper-conscious of the fact that, depending on where you happen to be that day, you're either actively thought of as a threat or actively threatened, or both. Of knowing you are never safe, not at home, not walking down a street, not in a car with your friends, not while asleep, not while 8 years old, not while in the custody of people paid to protect you, not in a swimming pool, not in a pew. And knowing this lack of safety is due to your blackness. Of being othered. Always. Of never feeling quite welcome in your own home, of being enraged, disencouraged, and fucking exhausted by it, and of feeling all those things separately and simultaneously. Dylan Storm Roof, the 21-year-old suspected of murdering 9 people at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, will eventually be caught. Or he will, obviously this is written right after it, or he will either be killed while the police attempt to apprehend him, or he will kill himself. He will soon no longer be an entity actively attempting to kill us. This is progress, I guess. Those are his words immediately after. This feeling as a black, and especially a black male, that he can never have the luxury of being not aware that he's in danger. Oh, okay. Do we have, we had a little technical trouble. Do we have the ability to play a spot? No.
Yeah, we can.
We can?
Uh-huh.
I would love to take a little break, catch my breath, and maybe come back and get into something else. Okay.
For the millions living with COPD, breathing becomes a real struggle. COPD stands for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, but you may have heard of it as chronic bronchitis or emphysema. Over time, it makes it harder and harder to breathe until you feel like you're breathing through a straw. COPD is the 4th leading cause of death in the U.S. It kills 1 person every 4 minutes, and it took my grandmother. An estimated 24 million Americans are affected, but as many as half of them don't even know it. It's a race against time to spread the word about this serious disease. If you're over 35 and have ever smoked, you could be at risk. The good news is, there are steps you can take to improve your symptoms. I'm Danica Patrick, and I drive for COPD. Take action today to breathe better tomorrow. Join the movement at driveforcopd.com, take our screening questionnaire today, and talk to your doctor.
This is the sound of a flat-screen television hurled off a building. Now the new bike your kid wants. These are the things you could have, all cast into oblivion. Because when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have bought with it. Use Energy Star light bulbs and appliances, and you could save hundreds of dollars a year. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
All right. I don't have the energy to talk about Rachel Dolezal now, and I wish, because that was fascinating. I found my feelings changing. And then she, when she showed up on, the Today Show or something and started talking, that's when she lost me. I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt for a little while, and then I thought, gee whiz. Weird, huh? Seriously strange. God. I thought, one of the first things I thought was, oh, wow, I did immediately think, coming after Caitlyn Jenner and that thing about, okay, so you get to define yourself. That's we were saying, if you see yourself as this, that's who you are. And then I thought, uh-oh, well, this is going to bump right into that. And, of course, it did. And people have written a lot of stuff trying to make... I'm sorry, I thought I saw a news item, but not. Biologically speaking, Jenner isn't a woman, and Dolezal isn't black, but they both feel so uncomfortable in their own skins that they've adopted new identities. How can you logically square the belief that Jenner's a hero while she's a mental case? And that's the kind of thing you start hearing, again and again and again. Those two coming so close together created the opportunity for lots of fascinating conversation. That you can simply decide who you are and then say who you are and what you are, and that if people don't accept your self-definition, then they're bigots. So, I don't know why I can't... Oh, there they are. Okay, Noreen says, more evidence that we are not far removed from those we fight. I heard on NPR this morning that the U.S. government has owned up to using minority groups, blacks, Puerto Ricans, in experimenting with mustard gas. Yeah, that's not news. During World War II. Yeah, no. Oh, believe me, our government and our medical community have a horrible... They're not secrets anymore, as far as I know. I think most things have been outed, but then there's always something else of experimentation on unwitting minorities, usually males. I don't know. So, anyway, I don't want to, unless you guys want to talk about her, I'm going to let it go. I want to talk to my guest on Wednesday about her, because heaven knows he's been writing about it. And he says that it's absolutely fine to make jokes about her. He wasn't sure at first, but now he's decided, absolutely. Would you like to hear what he wrote? Well, maybe I shouldn't. I'll wait till Wednesday. But he says he can't help himself now. He noted, and he's right, that a lot of these mass murderers, they do sort of look alike. They're about the same age. They all have those dead eyes and weird hair. I'm serious, they do.
It's not funny.
And he says, I mean, if you think about it, he says, if you look like a mass murdering racist, if you share any aesthetic characteristics with Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold, think of those two. That was the, in Colorado. That was the first horrific school shooting, right? If you look at Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold, if you look like them, or Stephen Kazmierzak, and I don't even remember which one he is, or Adam Lanza, or Elliot Rodger, or Dylan Roof, from now on, I'll assume you're a mass murdering racist, and I will act accordingly. Since black men are racially profiled all the time, I'm going to, he says, I'm going to report you for suspicious behavior if you look anything like those creeps, even if you're just buying a donut or sitting in your car. I'm going to call the cops if you attempt to swim in my community pool, or if you're walking down a street I happen to live on, or if you're sleeping on a park bench. If you happen to walk into the same space I happen to be in, I will stare you down, refusing to take my eyes off you like a cockroach in a kitchen. If you attempt to move into my neighborhood, I will send several passive-aggressive emails to the Homeowners Association to prevent it from happening. And if that doesn't work, I will move. And I will convince all of my friends to move too. I will do anything within my legal power to prevent you from voting and prevent people who look like you from getting elected. And if that doesn't work, I will do some illegal shit. If, by chance, something legitimately bad happens to you, arrest, assault, murder, I will find a way to assign blame to you, even if you were completely innocent. Everything you say, including hi, hey, and thank you, will be considered a threat, and I will teach my children to treat you the same way. Sounds crazy? Huh. Welcome to being black in America. And now everybody's going nuts because the president said the N-word. We're pathetic. We're just pathetic. I'm sorry. All right, speaking of pathetic, I bring you to Brian Williams. I just want to change the subject. Brian Williams, did you see? I used to think he was a wonderful anchor, and then he did that thing where he got caught lying and lying and lying again. And then he was made to wander in the desert for 40 years. And now he's been brought out and continuing his humiliation. He has been put on MSNBC to do news breaks. And he's probably lost 80% of his salary easily. And as part of his comeback tour, he sat down to be interviewed by Matt Lauer on the Today Show, in family thing. Did you see that? It was the most painful thing I didn't see the whole thing. I couldn't have borne it. As was pointed out by a reviewer, he was like a cross between Richard Nixon in full flop sweat and Bill Clinton parsing, well, it depends on what the meaning of is. Oh, it was horrific. Still couldn't say I lied. Still dancing around, but he was always the coolest man on TV. And he looked like the most uncomfortable, effed up person in the world. Alessandra Stanley, watching painfully for the New York Times, said this. He stated several times that his ego got the better of him. Like many other people in trouble, he clung to small, self-preserving distinctions. He didn't lie, he just didn't tell the truth. Almost like a white-knuckled addict who feels captive to the demon fix, Williams distanced himself from his fibs. He said this, "What has happened in the past has been identified and torn apart by me, and has been fixed, and has been dealt with. And going forward, there are going to be different rules of the road." I mean, it was the most bullshitty, unbearably cringifying. He's done. He done. But here's what the much more generous of heart Alessandra Stanley said. Television critic, New York Times. It was a jagged, imperfect apology. But, in a way, that was better than a glibly concise expression of remorse. There were more polished and politic ways to handle this kind of appearance. Mr. Williams was instead very human. It's time to give it a rest and move on. So she's just saying, okay, fine. So he is so messed up by this. He could not be his glib self. And so what came off is a guy who, even though he tells himself, I came to terms with this, things have been fixed. They haven't been, clearly. Wonder what he was doing stewing all that time in his penthouse in Manhattan. Jeez. We all fib. We all confabulate. We all take experience and hang little adjectives on it to make it even more a better story. Right? We all do. Jeez. Okay. Boy, you guys, do you even know I'm back? I don't think anyone's out there. They are?
72 people are out there.
Oh, wow. Breaking down the doors, apparently. Okay. Hey, I went to the Stones concert. Oh, man. I got to tell you, they're my band. That's my band. I don't go to concerts. I only go to Stones concerts. They are amazing. They are amazing. Their body, Mick Jagger's body, looks like my son's. It is that thin, that taut. He lifted up his T-shirt once. He had a six-pack. He is absolutely, there's not an ounce of fat on him. He could use a little fat, I think. And the others look the same. I mean, they do. Charlie, Keith, Ron, they all look unbelievably good from the neck down. Then you look at their ravaged, wrinkled faces, and it is so bizarre. But the energy that they put out. I couldn't even stand through the whole concert clapping and cheering. I had to sit, and I thought, Mick, who's older than I am, is running. He must have run 10 miles during the concert. Up and down, back on the, you're playing a stadium, you got to move around. Unbelievable. His voice sounds good. It hasn't changed a bit. The musicianship, God, I love him. I can't wait to see the next one. You think when, they're in their 80s? God bless them. Anyway, it was wonderful. Don't go to Florida in the summer. I couldn't. It's unbelievable. People live there. Jesus. Maybe that's what's happened to them in Florida and generally in the South. All that heat and humidity has poached their brains. I don't know. How can you live in that? I watched these two guys putting a roof on a building all day in 90-plus temperatures with the humidity so high you could die. I let out a scream, the likes of which you have never heard. It woke the dead within a 3-mile radius, coming out of my bedroom and encountering a bug that was that big, coming down the hall, that big. I am holding up my hand to look like a softball. Jeez, what was that? Oh. From then on, every time I opened a door or a closet or thing, I was like looking. I was afraid to walk with my feet. I was just, I mean, to me, that is a I don't care if they got a beautiful beach. You got a beautiful beach. You can have it. Jeez. I like the temperate zone. That'd be us. Temperate. Oh, God, what's that thing about the 3 bridges? The 3 bridges. Did you see that? The sister bridges. The Clemente, the Carson, and the Warhol. Peduto and Fitzgerald has said, okay, we're going to have to be painting these again. Anybody want to change the color? And they're letting us choose a color. I mean, there's very few possibilities. There's like silver for the Warhol and green for, I guess, Carson, and keeping the other one yellow, or keep them all the same color. It's called Pittsburgh yellow, or I forget what. But it's a very, very, I guess there's a website you can go and vote. And right now, keep them like they are is winning going away.
It's called Alamon yellow.
It's called Pittsburgh yellow now. That's what they said. You thought it was called what?
Alamon yellow.
Alamon? Oh, well, okay. But it's, so my friend Gary Rothstein did a funny little piece on it today on page 2 of the Post-Gazette, and he's very funny. But he was railing about the fact that we should have more choices. What are you about? What, you're afraid somebody's going to want? And he, there was just one line that made me laugh out loud, which was, give Puss a chance. Don't you think that's funny? What is puce? Give puce a chance. Is puce a kind of greenish yellow? Or is it a... What is puce? Oh, there it is. What would you call that? It's a kind of a... it's in the red family. Reddish pink. Reddish purpley.
Washed out. Gross.
That's not bad, actually. Give puce a chance! Oh, follow up. Remember when I delightfully told you about the wedding of these two WNBA stars, women basketball professional stars? They got married. Probably the most famous, Brittany Griner. And she married someone on another team, Glory Johnson. And Glory Johnson maintained all the way up till and through the marriage that she was not a lesbian. But she married, and in this day and age, who are we to say anything anymore? So I said, all right, she's not a lesbian, but she's marrying Griner. Fine. They got married. Oh, my God. It was covered in the New York Times. It was a beautiful affair. Yada, yada, yada. They lasted a month. It's over. Just in case you didn't see it, it's over. And on top of it, one of them's pregnant. That'd be Glory, the one who's not a lesbian. She's pregnant. Griner, the lesbian, is saying she was misled. What is with people? Griner is going for an annulment. She says their marriage... Oh, they didn't even make a month, was void based on fraud and duress. And Johnson countered by saying Griner forced her into marrying her and made threatening statements. They're both on suspension from their jobs because I forget why. What did they do? They got in a fight? Oh, that's right. They had a domestic. And that was before they got married. But then right after the domestic, they got married. And then they moved into their suburban Phoenix home And Glory Johnson tweeted, "It has always been a dream of mine to start a family with someone I love." And then she quickly started a family. And then they broke up. So there you have it. The annulment, which was filed by Griner, seeks to absolve her of any responsibility for alimony and to lay to rest any speculation about who's responsible once the baby is born, saying that I didn't have anything to do with that damn pregnancy. It wasn't in vitro fertilization. Using Glory Johnson's eggs and a donor sperm. So it seemed Griner'd be off the hook. There is no biological connection, but according to a lawyer, that might not matter because under Arizona law, there is a presumption that a child conceived during a marriage is a child of both spouses. Oh, dear God, the problems people have. The wrong turns they make. The unintended consequences. He said this may end up at the Supreme Court. Don't talk about the Supreme Court. I'm a nervous wreck. Obamacare could be this week. Jeez. So, but gay marriage could be nationalized, which would be good, or not. Hi, Lynn, you were missed. I almost forgot to listen this morning. I almost forgot to come in. You know, I could get used to lying around reading books. I really, 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 really could. I think I gained about 20 pounds, though, because one thing I do like to do on vacation is eat, and man, I did myself proud. I did. Okay. So I mentioned, I think, before I left, the death of Hilary Masters, who was a much-loved professor at CMU, and also the husband of a novelist who has been on this show a million times, Kathleen George, who writes these murder mysteries set in Pittsburgh. And there are always fun reads. Her name is Kathleen George, and I didn't say. What reminded me of it is he got a big obit in the New York Times yesterday. And he was such a precocious child. The Time starts out with this. It's such a cute story. For a 7-year-old, Hilary Masters sounded precociously lyrical when he arrived in New York for the first time and remarked, "Oh boy, Mom, what glory is ahead of me." 7 years old. Yeah, I'll tell you what glory was ahead of you, Hilary. You had a way with words now, didn't you? His dad was the famous poet, and I said that and then couldn't think of the really famous thing he'd written. His father was Edgar Lee Masters. He was a prolific poet. He is the author of Spoon River Anthology, which seems to me we all read in high school, I think. He didn't want to be a poet like his father, or he said he couldn't be a poet like his father, that he needed more room, so instead he became a novelist. But before that, some people live incredible lives. He owned a theater in Hyde Park, a playhouse, with his first wife. And this was the Hyde Park Playhouse, which was Eleanor Roosevelt was a patron. And a guy named Buddy Reynolds made his professional acting debut at the Playhouse. He later changed his name to Burt Reynolds. Also, one of the company's resident ingenue was Jocelyn Brando. She never made it, but it was Marlon's sister. He then went on to buy the Hyde Park newspaper. And all of this before he gets to CMU, where he was a professor for, I think, over 30 years. He was so supportive of his wife's career, and she didn't take up fiction writing until well into their marriage, which was a marriage of over 20 years. Anyway, Hilary Masters. You didn't know he was living amongst us, and he was a wondrous character, apparently, dead at 87. Show's gone, too, I think. So, guys, nice to be back. Nice to be able to rant and rave. I wish there wasn't so much to talk about. I will talk at you again tomorrow. My sister should be joining us. And then Wednesday, remember, I really hope you will tune in, for that with Damon Young. It's one thing for all us white folks to talk about all this. I'd really like to hear from a young black male. And we will on Wednesday. Have a great day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.